Hello and welcome. This recorded lecture is going to help you as you begin to craft your speech. So when we think about creating a speech, it can feel really daunting. How do we get from the assignment to actually giving a speech? And there's quite a lot of steps, but they all build upon each other. And if you do them in an order that makes sense, it's going to be better off. So this is the order that I've found is helpful for students as they're starting to create a speech that they're going to give. First, we need to begin with your audience. So you've already done the audience analysis module. You understand how important it is to know who you are talking to, because that is going to inform every decision from your topic to the outside sources you use to your delivery style. So once you know who you're speaking to, you can start to figure out why are you speaking. And that's something that we're going to be covering today, which is your purpose. You should know why. Sometimes it's assigned to you. For instance, you're assigned to give an informative speech. The purpose is assigned. You don't really have a choice. But sometimes you do have a choice when you volunteer to speak or in other instances. So once you know who you're speaking to and why you're speaking, then you can start to think about a topic that would be relevant and of interest to your audience. And once you have those three foundational elements, then and only then can you really start writing your speech, things that you're actually going to be saying in your speech. We want to start with our thesis, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Then you can start to develop your main points. There's a lot of crossover between public speaking and writing. So you can think of your main points almost as your body paragraphs. They are, we'll talk a little bit more about them later on, but they're your main ideas, right? The main things that you're going to be talking about, the meat and potatoes of your speech. Once you have that, you can work on your introduction and your conclusion, then adding in transitions that take you from your introduction to your main points, in between all of your main points, and then from your last main point to the conclusion. Then, and only then, should you really start to think about visual aids, if you're including them, and delivery, the verbal and nonverbal components of giving your speech. So these are all things that we're going to be covering throughout the semester, throughout the class. Today, we're just going to be covering a few of them, some of the earlier foundational ones. So let's begin with purpose. We actually have two different purposes, your general and your specific, but they are related. So your general purpose is big picture, why are you speaking? If you are assigned to give an informative speech, your general purpose should be to inform. And that's it, full stop. Your general purpose is just going to be to inform, or for persuasive speech, it'll be to persuade, to invite, to introduce, to commemorate, to accept, right? Depending on the style and type and context of the speech, you're going to have a different general purpose. So you should know right off the bat, big picture, why am I speaking? Then you can get into the specific purpose, which is what exactly do you want to communicate to your audience? So the specific purpose builds upon the general purpose, it's included, but it has a few more elements. So let's see how they relate to each other. For your specific purpose, you can see the second line from the top. You need these three things. You need your general purpose, plus your audience, plus your topic. And if you're doing persuasive, you need to include your position on the topic. So I have two examples here. So if your general purpose is to inform, your specific purpose might be to inform my audience of the academic tutoring services offered by the university or by the college. So here in the specific purpose, we can see it has the general purpose. It includes the audience. You can be as specific as you want to. And then the topic, which is academic tutoring services that are available to students. So I have another example for you down there at the bottom, if you would like to see. So general purpose for a persuasive speech would be to persuade. And then your specific purpose is to persuade my public speaking class to buy organic produce. So these are the two things that we need to be mindful of when we're thinking about our purpose. However, it should be noted, you do not specifically say them in your speech. The specific purpose is for you as a speaker to know and to guide you as you're writing your speech, but you don't actually say it verbally. And this is one of the #1 mistakes I hear students do. They'll begin their speech with the specific purpose, but you should know it, but you don't need to tell us. Instead, what you are going to tell us is your thesis statement. So your thesis is really similar to your specific purpose, but you actually say your thesis. It's the last thing you include in your introduction, and it's really similar to when you're writing an essay or writing a paper. You should also have a thesis in there. So for us and for our speeches, because our speeches are not that long, we are going to have 1-sentence thesis statements. And in this thesis, it should be a 1-sentence, a single declarative sentence that details the main ideas, assumptions, and/or arguments. So with your thesis, you need 2 things. You need your topic and a preview of each of your main points. So here I have 2 examples of the general purpose, specific purpose, and thesis that all go together for 2, but each one belongs to 1 hypothetical speech. So let's take a look at the informative speech on the left-hand side. Your general purpose is to inform. We know that because it's an informative speech. Your specific purpose, to inform my audience of the 3 most important ways to avoid getting lost while traveling. So this is a full specific purpose because we have the general purpose, to inform, your audience, and your topic, how to avoid getting lost while traveling. So remember, we don't say those in our speech, but we do say is this thesis statement. The 3 simplest ways travelers can avoid getting lost are to carry maps, plan out the route beforehand, and ask directions from knowledgeable sources. So from this 1 sentence, I should know, and your audience should know, the overall structure of your speech. I know what your speech is about, avoiding getting lost. And I know what each of your main points are. Main point 1, carry maps. Main point 2, plan ahead. Main point 3, ask for directions. And it should be in that order. The thesis is a mini roadmap for your speech, and having a good thesis is going to help your audience understand your speech, and they're not going to be surprised when you talk about your 3 main points. So let's talk about the next example. So this is for a persuasive speech. So your general purpose is to persuade, specific purpose, to persuade my audience to learn a second language. Again, we don't say that in our speech. What we do say is this: when we learn a second language, not only do we learn to appreciate the culture of the people who speak that language, but we also increase our own understanding of our own culture. So here, our topic is learning a second language and why you should do it, right? That's the position on the topic. And here we only have 2 main points, it looks like. So number 1 would be appreciating the culture of those who speak that language. And then main point 2, increasing our own understanding of our culture. If you have a 3rd main point, this is not an accurate thesis. You need to go back and edit it so that every single one of your main points is previewed in your thesis. And having a good thesis is really undervalued. Maybe it's not, maybe it's accurately valued. It's so important, and it's the last thing you say in your introduction, so it can leave a great impression on your audience, and it shows that you know who you are and you know what you're talking about, and you're going to tell them exactly what you're going to talk about. So that is what we have today for general purpose, specific purpose, and thesis. Thank you so much for listening, and continue on with the rest of the module.